So thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am honored to introduce Kevin Sleight, an alumni from SUNY Oswego, 2001. Kevin Sleight joined the Foreign Service as a special agent in 2007, prior to his current assignments as a regional security officer in Krakow. Kevin was an assistant regional security officer at Camp Alvarado, Cabal, where he secured diplomatic airport operations. His previous posts included the New York field office in Baghdad, Budapest, Washington, D.C., and Dubai. Kevin has also learned Farsi and Polish languages at the Foreign Service Institute. Before joining the State Department, Kevin worked for the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department in Boston, Massachusetts. He holds a master's degree in international relations from Fresno State University in Fresno, California, and a bachelor's degree from SUNY Oswego. Kevin was born and raised in Rochester, New York, and is joined in Poland by his wife and 2 sons. So, Kevin, the stage is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Jacqueline. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to students, and especially at Oswego State. I really remember my time at Oswego. It seems like yesterday. I was actually there and knew Jacqueline when I went to school at Oswego. So it was a really special time, especially, growing up in Rochester, only an hour away from Oswego. It was close to family, but a really warm environment. At Oswego, I played soccer for 3 years besides, going to class and, trying to do well. And then in my 4th year, I decided to study abroad. And personally, I'd never traveled overseas before I walked into the study abroad room and talked with the advisors there at Oswego. And we settled on London. And in the fall of 2000, I studied abroad in London and, paid my own way. That was the deal with my parents. And it really changed my perspective on, the world and, the opportunities that were out there. So when I came back from London, I ended up graduating a couple months later from Oswego. And then I went out to California to work with my brother. And my time in London and the help that Oswego State gave me, I was able to get a master's degree in international affairs and relations, and then move on towards my career with the State Department. Please, at any time, I think we're gonna save questions, to the end. But if you guys would like to ask questions at any time, I'm an open book. Please don't hesitate to stop me and say, hey, I didn't understand something, or can you give a little more background. But the one thing I guess I always wanted to get involved in is some type of public service and law enforcement. And so when I saw the special agent opportunity with the State Department, I was like, wow, that kind of checks all the boxes for me in terms of law enforcement work, the opportunity to serve overseas, and try to give back to the community and stuff, and do investigations and also like physical work. I like physical work as well. So I started applying to the State Department, and they hired me. The process took about 15 months from start to finish. That was 2005 to 6, and then I started in early 2007 with diplomatic security. I get the lesson, I guess I'll have to say about that is, if you are looking to go into federal service after Oswego, or even like an internship, you got to kind of plan ahead and try to get your applications in, but be patient too. Also, I got rejected from different opportunities that I thought, oh, I'm perfect for this. But you always got to, dust yourself off and keep moving forward. And luckily, DS was my #1 choice, and I ended up getting it. But we'll go over the application process if you're, specifically interested with DS. a career in DS. If not, we can also give you websites for different State Department type jobs that might interest you. But for diplomatic security, just to go through the PowerPoint quickly, let's see, I'll move to the next one here. One thing I need to improve is my PowerPoint skills. But so diplomatic security service for the State Department is we're the law enforcement arm of the U.S. State Department. There's about 2,000 agents worldwide for DS. If you were to compare that to like the FBI and Secret Service, they have many more agents on their books, so to speak, but most of them are domestic in the United States, where DS, out of those 2,000 special agents, we have about 1,000 overseas, and primarily those 1,000 overseas are serving at our embassies and consulates worldwide. We roughly have about like 270 locations worldwide. And the other 1,000 are back in the States supporting the agents overseas, but also doing their own work domestically, like protecting foreign diplomats, passport and visa fraud investigations, and physical security programs, and so on and so on. So even though we're smaller than like maybe the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, and other law enforcement agencies, we are also the most spread out and widely represented around the world than probably any law enforcement agency in the world. So it gives agents a lot of opportunities to serve really anywhere in the world throughout their career. Our primary responsibilities for DS are to investigate visa and passport fraud and other crimes related to those. The State Department, issues visas and passports. So as agents, we have to protect those documents. We protect the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State, wherever he or she goes in the world. So if you're on the Secretary's protection detail, a lot of those agents are going to see 70 to 80 different countries during their 2 to 3 year tour as an agent on the Secretary's detail. Also, as agents, we secure our embassies overseas. We advise the ambassadors overseas on all security matters. We manage our security programs, protect our diplomats. We work with U.S. companies overseas. For example, in November, we have a program called Overseas Advisory Council, and I meet with security professionals from U.S. companies that are stationed, for example, in Poland, like Google, Amazon, Facebook. I interact with those companies, almost on a weekly basis about, their security programs and any insight I can offer from the U.S. government. And then lastly, at least on the PowerPoint, we partner with our counterparts in host nations, domestic and international, all around the world and in the United States. I think what was mentioned, I started off at the New York field office in New York City. And then after New York City, I went to Baghdad, Iraq, and I was in Baghdad for a year from 2010 to 11. When I was in Baghdad, my job there was protect the U.S. ambassador to Baghdad. So I had a team of 15 security professionals, and whenever or wherever the ambassador traveled throughout Iraq, we would take him and make sure he was secure in cooperation with the Department of Defense. After Baghdad, I went to Budapest, Hungary, and I served at our embassy in Budapest. I was one of 2 agents in Budapest there, and it was a fantastic posting in Budapest. Really exciting. And, I'm talking a lot about diplomatic security here, but if you're looking for a job in, outside of security, like maybe in foreign affairs with the State Department, on the political side, our embassies and consulates in the State Department offer so many opportunities in terms of IT support, public affairs, the political side. There's, medical, we need medical support overseas. There's just so many endless careers within the State Department that, you as students and universities can look into while you're at Oswego, and if you're interested in that line of work, and then and kind of put your application in. That's and see where it goes. But after Budapest, I went to Washington D.C. I worked in Washington D.C. for 2 years, supporting our RSOs in Europe, and all the programs that they were running in Europe. After Washington, I went and studied Farsi, the language Farsi, for a year. And that was another thing. I never thought I would ever learn another language and be paid for it. I spent 10 months at the Foreign Service Institute in Washington, or just outside of Washington, in Arlington, Virginia. And I didn't think I was going to be any good. I was going to enjoy it. And it was a really fantastic opportunity. I really enjoyed, getting basically force-fed another language and learning about a different culture. And Farsi as the main language of Iran. And we don't have an embassy there, but I was doing visa and passport investigations in Dubai. And in Dubai, we would get a majority of the Iranians that would apply for visas in Dubai. Some other countries they would go to as well, but so I would do investigations there, and my Farsi language was a great help, and it was a great experience to go through that. I spent 3 years in Dubai, and then I went to Kabul, Afghanistan, and I spent a year in Kabul at the airport there doing security programs. After Kabul, I went back to the Foreign Service Language Institute and learned Polish for a year, which was incredibly hard and a struggle. But again, a great opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and now I'm here in Poland until next year. So a really varied career in terms of locations, but an exciting career. It's an opportunity to see the world. But also it can be tough. Foreign service life it sounds cool, but it can be really difficult in terms of you're moving every 2 or 3 years. If you have children that have school friends that make good friends in Nairobi, Kenya, and then all of a sudden dad is saying, hey, we're moving to Santiago, Chile next year. It's a huge thing, and especially it's very hard on the spouses too. That being said, when I pop out of bed in the morning, I'm like, wow, I have really this amazing opportunity. I hop in a car in Krakow and negotiate the streets, and I park in front of our consulate, and I walk into work, and it's I'm proud of myself for the work I put in, but it's unique every day, and which I really appreciate, especially coming from Western New York. I didn't think I'd be traveling the world like this, but going back, I guess, to DS quickly here. We work with all the different U.S. law enforcement agencies, especially overseas. I got a case the other day from Long Island that I'm working with the Polish law enforcement contacts I have here. I've worked cases from pretty much all over the world, just here in Poland, and to help out U.S. law enforcement, either in the States or DS worldwide. Kind of touched on worldwide investigations. I was an RSOI, an investigator in Dubai for 3 years, which was fantastic. And securing our borders overseas, working with other law enforcement agencies from other countries. We would get a fraud case, and I would pass it to the Brits. If we got another fraud case that involved Canada, I would call my Canadian counterparts. Things that we would all work together on to try to secure our borders. My Dubai investigative tour is, I'd like to say, my favorite tour, because it was the most interesting work, in my opinion. Just the visa and passport work that I got involved in was really fascinating. Also on the DS side, we do a lot of the major events. If you ever go to New York City in in September, you're going to get stuck in traffic. And that's because of the United Nations General Assembly. It's kind of like the Super Bowl of protection, as we call it, along with the Secret Service. It's where all the foreign leaders from the world come in and meet at the General Assembly in New York for about 2 to 3 weeks in mid to late September. That's a big event for diplomatic security. We also do a lot of security at the Olympics, the World Cup, the Pan Am Games, for example, the World Cup that just happened in Doha, Qatar. We had a DS agent that pushed out there probably 2 years in advance of the World Cup and sat there for 2 years working with the Qataris and all the other law enforcement there on how to make sure that World Cup went off securely. And then also working with the US soccer team, for example, and answering any security questions and inquiries they had before they arrived in Qatar, and making sure their time there was secure. That's one thing I've never been able to do that I've always wanted, is be on the World Cup security team. Hopefully, before I retire, I'll be able to pull that off. But the Olympics is also a really fascinating one too. I know, I think there's a Winter Olympics coming up in Milan, Italy, or outside of Milan, but in Italy. And I know a good friend of mine who's an agent is just got assigned to Italy for 2 years to prepare for the Winter Olympics there. So, really fascinating work if you're to look at it, not just because from the security side, but just, from interacting with, different cultures and people. And then we also do other international meetings too. So that international meetings part's very important. For example, I mentioned to Jacqueline earlier, and Stephanie, Poland is traditionally a very secure place, and I wouldn't say quiet. There's a lot of Poles in the United States, and we have a lot of interaction through that long history. But when in the last year since the war started, President Biden came to just outside of Krakow twice, and he went into Kyiv in February. And guess who? I have to do that work. The Secret Service calls me and say, "Hey, Kevin, we need cars. We need Polish police contacts. We need to make this trip go off without a hitch. Can you help?" And I say, "Yes, I can help you." And so when we're overseas as special agents, we're considered the experts on the ground with the contacts. And when you see U.S. delegations go overseas, they're dealing with the RSO, a person like me, to help get them, or help them have a secure trip wherever they're going. So with the war next door in Ukraine, my job has infinitely gotten busier. Everything, most of the USG support, like 90%, is coming through southern Poland, my 6 provinces that I'm responsible for, and landing either in Krakow or close to the Ukrainian border and going into Ukraine through southern Poland. So my sleepy post in Krakow has been very busy, but for good reason, support-wise.
So we did get a question in the chat. Is there ever a time when you've had to say no to someone?
Yes, it happens quite often. You get, for example, just before I was on this call, we have a large-scale congressional delegation that is coming to visit here in Ukraine in the next couple of weeks, and I get to say no a lot, because some of these visitors, up into the president will say, "Hey, I want to go see this," and they look at you as the security officer overseas to say, "You can't go see this, and this is why, because it would be unsecure for you. We don't have assets in that area to support your visit to that location." And that happens quite often, especially in war zones, because I'm talking about Poland, I'm talking about Europe, but I easily could be assigned in a war zone in Africa, in the Middle East, or anywhere else in the world. And saying no, you have to have your ducks in a row when you say no, especially when it's multiple levels above you in the U.S. government. And when you say no, you have to, be able to competently like explain it, because I'm facing that a lot now with Ukraine. There's a lot of interest from not only U.S. government, but, U.S. citizens that want to go there. And, we have to say no a lot in terms of like, that's just not possible. We can't support a visit to this location. We can't support a group that size going into that location. So it just takes a lot of field work with your fellow agents and, the ambassador, and making sure everyone's on the same page. But that's a great question, because we never, in a sense, want to say no to everything, because it's always easy to say no. As diplomats, we want to be able to support diplomacy around the world in the tough spots too. But as the security officer, sometimes you just have to say no, because you want to make sure you preserve, people's security. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. And frankly, I've said no to people I couldn't ever have dreamed of that I would be saying no to. We get the training to be able to say no, but it's this job's definitely afforded me some opportunity to say no to people. It's that's just on the the agent side. There's other positions within the State Department that there's a lot of like responsibility. You're dealing with millions and sometimes hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in aid and different things that are sent through the State Department out to different countries to help their democracies, to help their law enforcement. So you have to say no or say, hey, let's find a solution to be able to support this country better with U.S. taxpayer money. So you have to be creative in some aspects. And for me, it's always been really a great responsibility to kind of say like, wow, I have to answer this question. This question could change the course of our interactions with this country for a long time. So you always want to find different solutions and work together as a team. It's not just Kevin Sleight, the security officer, saying no. It's a whole mission approach. Finishing up here on the RSO side, we also protect information overseas. We have a lot of information at our embassies and consulates that we want to keep within the walls, and to people that have access that that have been cleared. That's a big job that we have. We advise the ambassador, but we also work a lot with the Department of Defense overseas. We have at most of our embassies and most of our consulates worldwide, we have Marine security guards, and the Marine Security Guard Force reports to the RSO. So we train a lot with the Marines at post, and also work with local guards at each post that we serve at overseas. So it's a challenge. At least on the DS side, we have so many responsibilities that it's in terms of security, it's quite exciting in terms of like all the different things I get involved in every day. I see another question in the chat. What was?
Do you want to answer it now or at the end? Up to you.
No, I can answer it now, just to keep it going. That's a great question. If you're saying in this field, as in security, correct? Like the security overseas field, would you say?
Yeah, security or even federal government. I mean, I guess like if you were to look at yourself and say like, what are the top things that you think contributed to your success?
I think at least flexibility is number one. Because of at least on the foreign service lifestyles, flexibility, every 2-3 years, even though I'm a State Department employee, I have to apply for my next job, and I have to deal with rejection, because of course everyone wants Paris and Rome. But I'll put in for Paris and Rome and I'll get rejected. And then I'll end up in, a different location that might not be as desirable for my family. or myself. So yeah, is flexibility. On the agent side, the one thing I've liked about my position is like, staying in shape. This job, I have to take physical exams, not just like medical physical, but actual physical exams, which to me is a great motivator to like stay in shape. And I have to, I'm like a law enforcement, a first responder overseas. So it's really important that I do that. What else? Successful, I mean, and just kind of having an open mind, to different cultures, languages. There's challenges daily. Like I'll go to get a sandwich down the street, and the lady will put like the wrong meat on my sandwich, and I'll be like, ugh, like I wish I was back at Subway in Oswego. But
It's not that good, Kevin. You're not missing much.
No, come on. It's just, the small things, like we all deal with in life, but, they kind of get exacerbated a bit overseas. So you kind of have to mentally prepare yourself a little bit, like getting a driver's license, getting your car, waiting for your car to get shipped, and not having a car overseas for 3-4 months and different things like that. So, my kids go to a Polish school right now and run around the house speaking Polish with a British accent. So it's different challenges like that, but also exciting things nonetheless.
Thank you.
Yeah, Juan just put in there, listing of internships and fellowships. I think I've had personally, that's a great post by Juan, because I've personally had many interns that I've worked with through the years, and several of them became agents, not because of my great mentorship or anything of that nature, but they got to see behind the curtain of the State Department, and it made a decision for themselves, like, hey, this is a lifestyle I think I could at least try. Once I get my degree and my feet on the ground on what exactly I want to do with my life. So careers.state.gov, that's the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from this discussion, really, if for the, Oswego State students, if they're, hey, I'm looking to maybe work overseas, the US government is a possibility. This careers.state.gov would be a great location to start, especially with internships and fellowships. There's a lot of different ones, a different array of fellowships. They're, and they offer to a diverse group of people and students, with, coming from different situations and, accessibility and things of that nature. So careers.state.gov is a huge website to take a look at. Let's see about this. Just moving on. Two more slides here, but at least again on the RSO front, yeah, I think I've kind of covered these points. Briefings to businesses overseas, working with different law enforcement agencies, primary liaison overseas for the U.S. government in terms of security. And then we're also doing physical and technical programs at the embassies overseas. Slide 9, if you can see it, is a quick look at our hiring process. It looks like a lot, and it is. But my opinion is if you're really dead set on applying for federal government jobs after university, apply to several and get a couple in the works that you're willing to work at, and then let those processes play through, because it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. For DS, you can see right here, I think it's like a 9-step process just to get hired. And, that can take up to 2 years, really, from my experience. The good thing about DS that I will say was when I applied, it was only open like twice a year, the application process. But now it's open 24, basically 365. You can hop onto the website any day and start the application process. So the State Department's made it a lot easier, at least on the DS side, to apply. And when I talk about DS, I'm just going to go back real quick, I believe, to slide 2. I'm not just talking about special agents like myself. I'm talking about engineers, like all of our cameras, our doors overseas, other, security engineering programs that we have to keep our buildings and people safe. We have engineers that, take care of that, not Kevin Sleight, the special agent. Very vital to our programs, to include technical specialists. We have diplomatic couriers whose job is to escort our information and equipment around the world. That's their job, is to, to make sure it gets from A to B safely. I mean, talk about, filling up passports with stamps. Like, the couriers are hopping from place to place all around the world nonstop, protecting our information and making sure it gets to our embassies and consulates overseas in a safe manner. And then we have our civil servant cadre that's supporting all the programs overseas. Like, for example, I think Mission Poland, we have 700 employees. Just, a couple hundred of those are American. The rest are local staff. But, to get all of, those Americans to Poland, their cars, their furniture, to set up their housing, their dog, to get over to Krakow or Warsaw is a huge effort. So, there's, a big effort back in the States, and in that realm and the logistical realm, but also the public service or public affairs type realm, political realm. There's massive consular realm where we have our passports and visas, huge offices back in the State Department. Well, last slide, just again, careers.state.gov, / DS, if you're looking for diplomatic security. There's a DS recruitment at state.gov email for questions. If there's any questions about working with DS specifically, you could always reach out to myself. My last name is Sleight, KJ at state.gov. And that's my email. I always love helping out, interns and trying to get them on a path. It's always satisfying to see them, email me a couple of years into their careers and say, hey, Kevin, the advice you gave me, really helped me get started. So, I always say, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll try my best to point people in the right direction or give advice that I think is, reasonable and important. But that's I would say the biggest things on the DS side. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts, concerns?
So one of the other questions too, and it kind of ties into another one a student had asked is, how can you increase your chances even now as a student that you can be more competitive to get that internship? And is it for undergrad, graduate students? Is it specific programs? What's your thoughts and feedback?
Hey, Juan, can you answer that maybe a bit better than I can?
As for the best way to get an internship or a heads up on the application?
Yes, yeah, and maybe some tips or tricks.
So I was actually in the high threat program a couple of years ago. That program, the SPS program, no longer is available, but I just applied due to my experience. But as for being an intern in the VSFS program, that was on USA Jobs, and it closed, and that was the easiest way to get in. So they opened in June, apply by July. Interviews and selections were in August, and you started in September. So we started in September, this internship. That was honestly the best way to get your foot in the door as a student, because it gives you an option to see whether or not if that organization is the best fit for you to begin with. State Department has multiple opportunities in the VSFS program, but if you prefer to go into the diplomatic security side and not consular fellows side, it just makes more sense for you. So you get to just try different portions of the federal government to best get into. I wanted to give back to DS because I previously obviously worked in diplomatic security, and I already had an idea of what to expect. So this was an easy way to give back, in my opinion, as a student, because I'm in a master's program right now. As for the big, I guess cherry on top would be the William D. Clark Senior Diplomatic Security Clark DS Fellowship. It's a brand new fellowships for people who want to get into the DS program. You'll have to give back some time. I think I can't remember off the top of my head because I should know this because I helped establish this program as an intern. It was kind of funny. But you finish your MBA or your master's program and you just give back time to the federal service as a DS agent. But not to mention the Colin Powell Leadership Program. If y'all heard of the Charles B. Rangel, there's another one, the Thomas Pickering. Like the website I gave y'all, Careers.state.gov has a listing of all the internships and fellowships, and that's one of the best ways to get you even your foot in the door. If you don't have the experience now, you can just build it on your resume and put that forward towards the application. And like Special Agent Kevin said, you could apply and next thing you know, 2 years later, you're working overseas. You never know if you don't apply. Honestly, that's in my opinion. I would never thought I'd be an employee at the State Department in 2012 in the high threat program if I didn't take a shot at it. Like, if you didn't get in the first time, just keep applying, especially if this is USA Jobs has the posting for the DS Special Agent. That is so much better than when it was compared a couple of years ago where you could only apply twice a year. A lot of my friends who left the SPS program became special agents. They're still in right now. And that was at the time where there wasn't a 365 revolving application side. And if DS is not really your flavor, you could always try the foreign service because they collaborate with everything with diplomacy. Regional Security Office and the Foreign Service they have to work together. So honestly, anywhere they go around the world, you will always meet an FSO and an RSO or ARSO. So those are the best routes I could give you to even apply. But honestly, I would say the fastest way in besides applying would be the virtual student federal service or becoming a third-party contractor. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for DS and DS only. So there's different programs as Department of State contractors, but that's just on you if you want to go down the route. Like OSAC, Mr. Kevin said earlier, OSAC's another division in State Department. They help out with public and private sector security programs. That's really just apply. That's really all I got really.